Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Well, hi there. Welcome back to part 2 of How to Cope with Anxiety, another Put It Into Practice episode. Now, if you didn't catch part 1 of How to Cope with Anxiety, definitely head to the listing of my podcast episodes and go back a couple episodes, maybe 2 or 3 episodes, and look for part 1 of How to Cope with Anxiety, because I share a little bit about my history and story of anxiety, what I went through right after giving birth to our first daughter, as well as what I experienced right as the pandemic was happening here in the States, which was in like February of 2020. Yeah, gosh, feels like so long ago, but not really. Okay, so in that last episode, I gave you 5 different anxiety busters, and those are some of my favorites. Now, I know that there are so many things that you can do to cope with your anxiety, and I could do 15 episodes on just anxiety busters. So if you're doing something that's helping you with your anxiety and I don't mention it, I mean, gosh, don't stop. Like, that saying, don't fix what isn't broken. I mean, there's so many things that you can do to help with your feelings of anxiety that the ones that I'm sharing with you are just kind of the ones that I use and work with my clients with, that they see some really good results with. If they don't have any skills for handling anxiety, this is usually where they are going to start. So I'm going to cover 4 more ideas that you can implement to help with anxiety. But before I do that, this is a good time to remind you that it's important to stress that these episodes are not meant to take the place of any work you're doing with your therapist or doctor. In fact, please run these ideas by your counselor or doctor before you act on them to make sure that you're ready for them or that you're even a fit for the suggestions. Okay. I really can't stress this enough, that each person is unique and their situation is unique. So please talk with your doctor before starting anything new that I might be suggesting. Okay. So the next tip I want to give you is journaling. Research shows that journaling can reduce anxiety and stress, and seeing your anxious thoughts laid out on paper and outside of your head can help them feel and make them more manageable. In a 2018 study, participants with high anxiety and medical conditions were asked to journal 3 days a week for 3 months. And at the end of that study, researchers noted that the participants had fewer anxiety symptoms after just 1 month of journaling relative to usual care. There's so many benefits of journaling. Like I said, it's a way to cope with stress as well as other mental health conditions such as depression. And then another research showed that writing down our deepest feelings and thoughts can improve our physical and psychological well-being. And journaling may help you feel in control of your emotions. So if you live with anxiety, journaling can help you cope with that condition. It's going to help you identify fears or concerns that may be causing you the stress. It's going to help you recognize triggers that exacerbate these feelings of stress, help you manage your stress more efficiently in the future, help you practice positive self-talk to build your confidence, and identify and reduce unhelpful thoughts and behaviors. Now, there are a lot of different journals out there, and I want you to find one that you like the most. You can definitely just start with a simple notebook and pen. But there are other things like bullet journals, gratitude journals, calendar journals, drawing journals, coloring journals. Did I mention those? I like gratitude journals. Those are my favorite. But once you've chosen the type of journal you want to use, consider or make yourself establish a routine. It's really important because you have to, for it to work, you have to actually do it, right? So set aside time to journal every day. Setting time to write every day, even if it's just 5 to 10 minutes, can be very helpful. And I know sometimes it can be difficult to carve out time, but even just spending a minute or 2 journaling every day can provide you some benefits. And creating a schedule can help you stick with the habit, and journaling can help you decompress and achieve mental clarity. But you definitely want to keep it simple. This is not supposed to be a stressful thing. This is not a test. You're not being graded on it. So keep it free of rules. And you can also just journal whenever the mood strikes. But for journaling to work, you actually have to do it. So don't forget, if you want journaling to help you, you gotta journal. Okay. All right. So the next tip or the next anxiety buster is learn how to identify and manage your triggers. I mean, you can definitely identify your triggers on your own, but sometimes we need the insight and guidance of a therapist, right? And like a lot of times, triggers can be pretty obvious, like caffeine, drinking alcohol, doing drugs, or smoking, but other times they can be less obvious. So, other things like long term problems, like work related situations, relationship situations, those things can take some time to figure out. So, you might need some extra support through therapy or even with your friends. But when you do figure out what the trigger is or are, you should definitely try to limit your exposure if you can. But if you can't limit it, like it's due to a stressful work environment that you can't currently change, there are other coping skills that you can incorporate to help you deal with the stressful work environment. And sometimes you might need a therapist to help you with that, or a good friend, once again, if you can't, kind of problem solve that on your own. All right. So, number three, this is the one that I like the most, which is understand your thought patterns and then work to change them. So, have you heard of CBT? Probably have. CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps people learn different ways of thinking about and reacting to anxiety causing situations. And a therapist can definitely help you learn ways to change negative thought patterns and behaviors before they spiral. Now, this is something that in my household we like to call tell yourself a new story. So sometimes when I'm going down that path of having the anxious thoughts or anxious feelings, and I know I need to like rein it in, I say, okay, Lisa, tell yourself a different story. You don't have to follow this path because I know this is going to get me nowhere that I'm going to enjoy. So what is the new story? What is the new meaning that I can make out of these thoughts? So I'm going to go over a couple thought patterns that you might recognize that might cause you anxiety. And I found this on a Psychology Today article, and I'll put the link in the show notes for you guys to really read up on it. But the first thought pattern that can increase anxiety is the idea of it's my fault. Your inner critic can berate you for failing to meet expectations, and you blame yourself for undesirable outcomes, even if they are not your fault. So, here's an example, and this is straight from the article, you guys. You may blame yourself for failing to earn a promotion when in reality, many highly qualified candidates applied for the same opportunity. In such a competitive setting, the decision to promote a different applicant may have been based on external factors beyond your control, such as luck or outside connections. And it can be difficult when your efforts do not lead to the desired outcome. So let's not make it harder by adding unwarranted self criticism to the mix because really, your inner critic is telling you that you didn't get the job because you're making things up in your head, X, Y, and Z. But really, you have no idea why you didn't get the job. It could be for a number of reasons or factors, and you have no control over those things. So this is one of those thought patterns that I think if you are able to just tell yourself a new story or maybe think about it in a different light, your anxiety could dissipate. Okay, thought pattern number two is I'm anxious about everything. Life is stressful and it throws curveballs at the most inopportune time. And when you regain some semblance of order, life decides to throw a couple more challenges for good measure. I mean, I have been there. It's like life does not slow down over here when you are a mom and a wife and an employee and a podcaster and a coach, all the things, right? And so there's plenty of things for me to get worked up about if I let the things become problems for too long. So like if my problems begin to stack on top of each other, instead of me looking at each one and addressing each one individually, man, my anxiety can spike through the roof, right? So when problems start to blur into one another, it makes them exponentially harder to solve. So I like to instead look at each of my problems that I have to solve or worries, and I like to rank them from least or from most to least anxiety provoking. And then when I go over them in that order, I'm able to tackle them one by one and have way more control over the actions that I take on these problems that need to be solved. Okay, so number three is the thought of I feel trapped. So it can be hard to make decisions when we view them as irreversible. It can feel overwhelming to assume that all decisions are final and there is no going back. However, so many decisions are reversible. If you're not happy with a job, you can always start to look for another one. If you're not happy where you live, you can always explore where to move next. And the same holds true for relationships. Decisions often come with great responsibility and potential consequences. So take your time to collect the necessary information to make a sound decision. Reversing course can come at a great cost to you and others. However, you can reverse course. This realization takes away the pressure of making the perfect decision every time you arrive at a fork in the road. Every decision we make isn't going to be perfect or isn't going to lead to the outcome that we hope so. But know that if you make a decision and it doesn't turn out the way that you're hoping, you have the power in you and the control to decide to change course. If you get into a job that you don't like, well, okay, you're not a failure. Tell yourself a new story. It's a learning lesson. You're going to fail forward and you're going to think more clearer or harder about what you want your next job to look like. And you have total control over looking for another job. That's okay. If you get into something and you decide it's not for you or it's not the best situation, you can control that. You have power in that situation. Okay. The next thought pattern that can cause anxiety is it's all or nothing. Thinking in extremes is common because it simplifies decision making. It's easier to pick between black or white compared to different shades of gray along a continuum. There are settings in which all or nothing thinking is warranted. Examples include a doctor performing a procedure, a physician prescribing medication, or a pilot flying an airplane. And mistakes there can definitely lead to big catastrophic outcomes. However, many of our daily endeavors do not carry that same level of responsibility. You can make a mistake on a job interview or an exam and still have a successful outcome. And the same holds true for your fitness goals. If you occasionally slack on your exercise routine or have a cookie now and then, it's okay. It's not going to wreck all the work that you've put into it. We are imperfect beings and a constant work in progress. So give yourself grace to make and learn from your mistakes. Okay, so number 5 is the worst is yet to come. The most common anxiety provoking thought pattern that is observed is this worst case scenario thinking. In this pattern, we ignore more likely scenarios and zoom in on the worst possible outcome, even if it has a low probability of occurrence. This thought pattern is the equivalent of focusing on a crooked tree branch and ignoring the surrounding forest. So many of our worries are only imaginary constructs that live in our brain. We treat them as imminent and unavoidable, even though many may never come to fruition. So take a moment to reflect on the odds that your fear will become a reality. I do this a lot. I weigh the odds. Is this something, are the odds in my favor here? And I think about that a lot. In addition, focusing on taking reasonable precautions to protect yourself against the worst possible outcome. This can help you focus on what is within your sphere of control. I like that tip a lot. And the last thought pattern that increases anxiety is I am not enough. We make the mistake of tying our self-worth to our level of success. We endlessly run on a hamster wheel, chasing the next achievement to fuel our self-worth. Anxiety spikes as our self-worth oscillates with every perceived success or failure. The truth is that your self-worth is not based on your level of success. It is not determined by your degrees, education level, physical abilities, looks, or how much you earn. Self-worth is an undeniable and essential part of your humanity. You are worthy because you are a human. Now, this is not an invitation to complacency by any means. There's nothing wrong with pursuing a degree, a job promotion, or a raise at work, because such endeavors can definitely result in personal growth and allow you to make a positive contribution to the life of others. However, do not make the mistake of basing your self-worth on your level of success. So, in summary of all of these thoughts, when you are experiencing anxiety, take a moment to reflect on your patterns of thinking. They may be based on erroneous assumptions that are fueling your anxiety. Now, I really, really love this is an article that I got. It's from Psychology Today, Dr. Demetrios Satsiris. I hope I said your name right, Dr. Satiris. I think I did. I'll put the link to this article in the show notes. But I really, really like this article, and I share it actually with clients when we're talking about anxiety and thought patterns. So I'm glad I get to share it with you guys in this episode. So, a couple other things to talk about when it comes to anxiety. What can help with anxiety? Eating a healthy diet. And there are actually foods out there that help with anxiety. And you might be surprised to learn that these foods have been shown to reduce anxiety. So, in mice, diets low in magnesium were found to increase anxiety-related behaviors. So, foods naturally rich in magnesium may therefore help a person to feel calmer. Examples include leafy greens like spinach and Swiss chard. Other sources include legumes, nuts, seeds, and whole grains. So, make sure that you're getting enough of these whole foods in your nutrition, in your diet. Foods rich in zinc, such as oysters, cashews, liver, beef, and egg yolks, have been linked to lower lowered anxiety. I'm not a fan of oysters or liver, but I definitely eat a lot of egg yolks. So that's good for me right there. Also, we eat a lot of beef, so that's good. Other foods, including fatty fish like Alaskan salmon, wild if possible, contain omega-3 fatty acids. And a study completed on medical students in 2011 was one of the first to show that omega-3s may help reduce anxiety. Now, this study used supplements containing omega-3 fatty acids. But prior to the study, omega 3 fatty acids had been linked to improving depression only. So that's pretty cool. Eat some salmon, take your omega 3s, and it could definitely help lower your anxiety and your depression. A study in the Journal of Psychiatry Research suggested a link between probiotic foods and a lowering of social anxiety. Eating probiotic rich foods such as pickles, sauerkraut, and kefir were linked with fewer symptoms. We love to eat kimchi. We eat a lot of kimchi here, so that's good to know. I know that is a probiotic food that's pickled, and we really enjoy kimchi. If you haven't had it, it's like pickled cabbage with some spices in it. I think it's a Korean food. Yeah, Korean food. Asparagus, known widely to be a healthy vegetable, based on research, the Chinese government approved the use of an asparagus extract as a natural functional food and beverage ingredient due to its anti-anxiety properties. So there you go. Asparagus might help relieve some of your anxiety symptoms. Foods rich in B vitamins, such as avocado and almonds, can help lower your symptoms of anxiety or feelings of anxiety. These feel good foods spur the release of neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine, and they are safe and an easy first step in managing anxiety because you have control over what you eat. Now, if some of these foods sound weird to you or you're not quite sure, you don't have to go out and have a meal of liver, asparagus, kimchi, and omega 3s. No, you can start with just adding some of these foods to your diet, like add in some leafy greens to maybe 1 or 2 meals a day. Check out some omega-3 fatty acid supplements if you're not keen on salmon. But what goes to show is that certain foods out there are definitely going to help with reduction of mental health symptoms. I think that's pretty cool. Okay, and the last tip I'm going to give you in this episode is getting into a good sleep pattern. I'm sure you know that a lack of adequate sleep can affect both physical and mental well being. So you want to make it a priority to set aside at least 8 hours for sleep each night. And you want to be very intentional about your sleep routine. If you need to set an alarm on your phone to remind you that it's time to wrap up the activities of the day, then do so. And when it's time for bed, turn off any electronic devices such as your phone or TV, as these can stimulate your brain and make falling asleep more difficult. In fact, I would encourage you to take your phone and put it in a different room altogether and don't use your phone as your alarm clock. It's just too easy to reach over and grab that phone. Even if you say, I'm just going to use it as an alarm clock, I'm just going to use it as an alarm clock. It's all it's here for. It's just too easy if you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't go back to sleep to grab your phone and get on the phone. And the next thing you know, you spent 2 more hours not sleeping. Do you see where I'm going with this? In fact, we have an old timey alarm clock. I have to have my phone in the room sometimes when I'm on call for work, but that's about or when my kids are out and I know that I'm going to be in bed before they get home. There are definitely, in my mind, appropriate reasons to have the phone in the bedroom. But I make it a point to, once I know everybody's home, the girls are here, I put it away as far as I can reach it, and I don't want to see that light come off my phone until the morning. In fact, I flip it over so I can't see it if it's, notifications are going off, even if I have it turned off to silent. Oh, and make sure your thermostat is set to a comfortable setting and that your room is quiet and calm. And you might need to get some curtains, blackout curtains if there's a lot of light coming in off the street. Close the door to your bedroom if there's lights on in the house. Things like that. Just you want to make your room as comfortable for sleeping as possible. Okay, I feel like we've covered a lot of anxiety tips. And like I said earlier in this episode, I know there are hundreds of anxiety tips out there. And I would love to hear from you guys. If you want to send me an email or message me on Instagram, let me know what your favorite coping tips for anxiety are. I'm always interested in hearing what works for people. But I also want to remind you guys that due to my schedule, I'm unable to take therapy clients at this time. But I definitely have some resources in the show notes. If you are looking to find a therapist and you're not sure where to start, I have some resources that can get you going. And Yeah, so I'm really enjoying putting these together, these put it into practice episodes. I would love it if you have a topic that you want me to cover. Feel free to reach out. You can send me an email, lisa@lisamustard.com. You can message me on Instagram. Let me know what topics you'd like me to cover. I will do some research for you if I'm not familiar with it and, come back and give you some actionable and practical tips that you can put into practice to up level your emotional and mental health. Thanks for being here, friends. It's just an honor to be in your earbuds. And I'm just grateful for every one of you out there and for the support and the feedback you're giving me. I recently opened up a Buy Me a Coffee page. So I'll put the link in the show notes if you are interested in helping me, with the production of the show. Now that I'm podcasting twice a week, it does, there's more expenses involved. So if you want to buy me a coffee, you can definitely do that. So just follow the link in the show notes. You guys have a great day, and I will be back soon. Hey guys, before we end this episode, if you are liking my content, if you're liking my podcast, be sure to go over and leave me a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you are up for it, I'd love it if you left me a review as well. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine.
Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content.
And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.